Okay, so I guess everybody, welcome to the Childcare Information Meeting. I am hoping that we can cover a lot of stuff today in terms of how to get started. The tentative agenda, I guess, is one, we'll do some quick.
Good thing we're recording it because I'm not getting none of it.
If all of you, I'm gonna mute everybody for now, just so that way we don't get anybody, any background noise. So when you talk, don't forget to unmute yourself. So the schedule for today's meeting, I guess, is one, we'll just do some really quick introductions so that everybody kind of knows who's on the phone. But then Erica is kind of going to go over the process for getting started and licensing. Jennifer is going to kind of talk about running a childcare business, because ultimately this is a business. And so, we want to make sure that everybody is kind of prepared and thinking along those lines. And then I'll kind of follow up with talking about the childcare startup grant funding that's available. And then we'll kind of open it up much more for questions. For the existing childcare providers, any tips that you guys have for, and the lessons learned that you've had over time. But then I also thought we can maybe just talk a little bit about what we see as the actual need, and just kind of have a little bit more free-flowing conversation that way. So with that, I'm going to have everybody do introductions, and I'm just going to kind of go around to my screen. So don't forget to unmute yourself, but just very quickly who you are and if you're an existing provider or interested in being one, so forth. So Erica, I'm going to start with you.
Hi, my name is Erica Hodgins, and I am the KDHE Childcare Licensing Lady. I have been working in public health since about 2013, and I just specifically started doing childcare licensing during the pandemic. So about a year ago, I did work with your former surveyor, Michelle Longfellow, for a little while, but I'm on my own now. And I do work remotely out of my home, and I travel to Lincoln County I'm out of Concordia. So I come to Lincoln County to do your surveys and help you get started with childcare licensing.
Okay, thank you. And Jennifer?
There we go. Operate on a daily basis on multiple screen sharing platforms, and like the unmute and the mute and all of that is in different places. And so I'm like, okay, which one am I on now? Oh yeah. Anyway, all right. Jennifer Burgart, Childcare Aware of Kansas. I am currently the Community Outreach and Engagement Specialist. And I say currently because when I began with the organization about 18 months ago, I was in the early childcare specialist position. So I would have been working directly with childcare providers. Now I'm working kind of more predominantly with communities and trying to start up childcare opportunities and choices and options for families. So working with a number of community partners to do that. So excited to be here this evening, and please do not hesitate as the evening goes on to ask any of us, because we have lots of wisdom here on the screen if you're thinking about starting up a childcare in Lincoln County. So glad to be here and welcome.
Awesome, thank you. Faye, put you on the spot.
Hello, my name is Faye Metz. Did daycare for 5 years now. Moved back into town 2015 and try to help out. Hope we get more daycare providers in town to help. Thank you.
Because you and Nicole get called all the time wanting positions. Yes. And you don't have any. All right. Rachel.
Rachel Volt. I'm interested in trying to get a daycare started.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. Hopefully you'll find this helpful. I know we've
Yeah.
had a brief conversation a little while ago about it, so hopefully we can
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
start
yes.
it. Yeah, okay. Nicole?
Nicole Weber. I have had a daycare in Lincoln since 2010, so about 11 years. We are definitely overworked, and we will gladly share some of our crazy with you guys.
Definitely. All right, and Caitlin, can you hear us? I put you on mute a little bit ago because I was thinking we were hearing something. So you'll have to unmute yourself if you can. All right, well, Caitlin, if you have any questions, just feel free to put something in the chat box too, and we can try and catch you that way. But all right, so to go ahead and kind of get started, well, I guess I'm Kelly Gorley. I'm the Economic Development Director for Lincoln County, and I am also someone that I feel like is always asked, where, you know, what are we going to do about our childcare shortage issue? Because this is, it's not just a parent problem, convenience problem or anything like that. It's an economic development problem is what this is. So it's in, you know, I believe it's inhibiting families' ability to grow. It's inhibiting families' ability to move to Lincoln. So it just, we're kind of, it's impacting us on many different levels. So with that, I guess, Erica, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about sort of the process of getting started and what people needed to know and what they need to do and how does this work?
Okay, great. Well, I'm just really excited to be here. I'm excited to meet Faye and Nicole because I haven't been over to see you guys yet. This is such an important job and such an important part of our community. So I hope that you feel like you know who your team is. I play an important role in helping you get started and stay in compliance with our regulations. And then there's other great resources out there to help support you and help your business grow and have a quality childcare. So I am going to share my screen and show you a few things that I want to point out online. Oops. Kelly, can you allow me to screen share? There we go. Okay. Does everyone see the KDHE website? Yeah. Okay, good. So I just thought I'd show you, we have a lot of resources on our website, and this is somewhere you can go later. Take a few notes now, and maybe you can check things out later. If you go to the main KDHE website and go to the right side, and we'll click on childcare facilities. There we go. This takes you to Childcare Licensing's homepage. And I just want to highlight a few areas as you're thinking about opening a childcare to go. So on the left side, the third link down says how to open a licensed childcare facility. And so this is just a really great page to go through, especially maybe even Kelly or as community members. How do you know if you need to be licensed? And there, I just wanted to briefly show you how to look over those. There are 4 conditions where you would not need a childcare license, but I know what we're talking about tonight is because we need more licensed providers. So one of the first things I want you to think about is which kind of license might best fit your needs. And there's several options. There's licensed daycare home, group daycare home, and schools. The 2 I really highlight tonight are the licensed daycare home and the group daycare home. And there is just a little tiny difference there. The main difference is a licensed daycare home is operated by 1 provider, and the maximum number of children they can have is 10. And there are charts you can click on this page. It shows you, it all goes, you start with your infants and how many infants you have enrolled, and then you kind of move to the right. So if you have 3 infants, you could have 3 preschool age and 2 school age for a total of 8 children. And that gets tricky, as Faye and Nicole can kind of probably tell you, because that can fluctuate throughout your day. You might have different ages of children there. But that would be for one provider, and the fee for that kind of license is $85. And then the group daycare home, the main difference is you can have 2 providers, and your numbers that you can watch goes up if you have 2 qualified providers. So I do just want to point out, you can apply for a group license and operate with 1 provider. You would just go back to that 1 provider chart that's up here at the top. If you have a second provider, that increases the number that you can have in your childcare. And the fee is only $2 extra. So I kind of try to point people towards maybe doing the group. Right now you may think, I'm just going to do it myself, but later on you may find someone that you could have become a qualified provider to work alongside you, and it would give you a little bit more flexibility in your numbers. If you want to switch the kind of license, you kind of have to start the licensing process over. So you have to reapply for a new license and those kinds of things. I do have a little bit of good news in that we do have a current grant program where these fees are being waived for a period of time, as well as our fees and some of the fees that might have usually would cost you to get into your licensing. There's a grant covering those statewide right now. So that's really exciting. So I'm going to go back to how to open a facility. So once you decide what kind of best fits your needs, your next step is to contact me for an orientation. That is a free meeting. It's on Zoom just like this. It's usually about 2 hours long, and in that we kind of go in more depth of what's entailed in getting your childcare space ready and what some of the regulations are, and becoming familiar with the steps you need to take to get licensed. Once you've completed an orientation, you can submit your application online, and you also do that right from this website. There is a link over here to submit your childcare licensing online. You can also do it by paper if you prefer. And then there's also some additional steps down at the bottom here for the Kansas State Fire Marshal has to also do an inspection of your home. So that kind of is the difference between license and group. And then I also wanted to share a document, and I did send a copy of this. Can you see that, Kelly? Did it switch the screen?
Nope, not yet.
Okay. I'm still getting used to Okay, this is the document that I shared with Kelly. And if you sign up for an orientation with me, this is what I also send out. So it's just kind of like a checklist, step by step, what you would do to submit your childcare licensing application. So again, at the top is your orientation with your surveyor. And then there's, you can kind of keep track some of these steps. You definitely have to do that one first, and the other ones you can kind of be working on at the same time. So you need to also contact the fire marshal and request a survey of your home through them. You complete your application online, and there are some forms that you need to fill out: a health assessment, a TB skin test, and then there's some health and safety trainings that you need to complete within 30 days of submitting your application. We have and this is all on our website too, the links are on here. There is a self-evaluation checklist. It's kind of a self-survey you can do to get ready for your initial survey with me. And while all this other stuff is happening, you will be, part of your application is to submit your names for background checks, and certain people have to have their fingerprints done. So you're waiting for a OCA number, and once you get that, you get your fingerprints done. And then you will hear from KDHE about your temporary permit being issued. So once you have your temporary permit, you can start watching children, and you schedule your initial survey with me. And then usually your initial survey leads to some compliance checks. So we just want you to be in full compliance before we recommend your full licensure. And once you're in full compliance, you get your full license from KDHE, and then you're ready to go. So a couple of other things I have at the bottom are to consider enrolling in a USDA food program. It's a program where you can participate, and they help you plan your menus. You get reimbursed for your groceries. It's just a great resource for providers. If you are following the rules of the food program, you're going to meet all the regulations from KDHE. And then another consideration to take into account is possibly becoming a DCF provider. A lot of our families in this part of Kansas qualify for child care assistance. So if you are enrolled as a DCF provider, then you can accept payment from DCF for those kiddos. One other thing I wanted to share at this point was, I have another really handy guide. Okay, here we go. Okay, this is, and I could get this to Kelly as well or email you. This is just a great kind of guide to organizing business records for licensed and group daycare homes. So some things, and we go over this more in orientation, but some things you need to keep on file.
Hey, Erica, I think we're seeing your Windows Explorer with a list of files where I don't think we're actually seeing the
okay.
document.
Sorry about that. Let me see if I can figure out how to share it. That is the hard part of Zoom, I think, is I can see it, but I can't tell if you guys can see it. I'm going to try one more time. Can you see it now?
Nope, not yet.
No? Okay. Well, I'm not sure how to do that part because it's not a web link. It's a form I have on my computer. So I can get a copy of that to Kelly and she can send it out to you guys. Let's see. Let me get out of there. Can you just see me now, or do you still see my file? Okay. Okay. There are some things that you post on your wall or on your fridge. There are some forms that you keep on file for yourself and or the children that you're watching. And then there are some like policies that we ask you to write for behavior, safe sleep, discipline, emergency plans. There's a lot of planning that goes and thinking that you have to do ahead of time to get ready for your initial survey. But that's why I'm here and that's why Jennifer's here. We're both resources to help you kind of get your mind wrapped around those kinds of things. But does anyone have any questions about the licensing process itself?
So just to do like a really super quick rundown, the first step is they got to talk to you to do an orientation. Mm-hmm. Then they got to talk to the state fire marshal to see if they're allowed to even do a child care facility in wherever they plan to do it or hope to do one. And after those two things, they can at least submit an application and get that going.
You can
And,
actually submit your application before you contact the fire marshal.
okay,
Sometimes that that can take a while, depending on how long they take to come out. I can tell you that if you are going to operate your childcare in your basement, you do need state fire marshal approval. And then they look at things like how many smoke detectors you have and those kinds of things. And then also if you have a humongous house, you can't do childcare on your 3rd floor. I don't know if anybody does or not.
okay. But for the most part, they can then submit the application and be working on their trainings and certifications and all that kind of stuff,
Exactly.
right? Okay, and then they can get a temporary license. So after they get all their trainings in place, they can go for, and they can get a temporary license, and that will be kind of the trigger for you to actually come out and look at
Do the survey. Right.
look at the house. Okay, and then once they pass you, you can kind of provide the permanent license. Is that right?
Correct. I recommend licensure.
Okay.
And I do want to say that KDHE does take, so from the time you submit your application, they say it can take up to 60 to 90 days before you get your temporary permit. I have no way of knowing because that all goes through Topeka. In my experience so far, it's not taken that long, but it can. So it's just really important to completely fill out the application online and to get your people submitted for, it goes through online who all you need to submit for a background check. Like if you're gonna operate in your own home, everyone ages 10 and above goes on your background check. If you're gonna have a second provider or substitutes and those kinds of things, they would go on your background check as well.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. Well, I guess, does anybody have questions at the moment? All right. Jennifer, do you want to start in talking about childcare as a business and kind of go through some of that stuff?
Yeah, and if I might, just because childcare is just such a unique business in and of itself too. There's lots of pros, and just like any other thing that you choose to do as a career, there are cons too. We'll just be blunt about that. We'll be honest. Those, let's see, Faye, I think, are you the only one that is currently has a childcare right now? Family childcare? Yeah.
Nicole does.
And Nicole.
Faye and Nicole.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Just on my screen here, because feel free, Faye and Nicole, as I'm kind of going over some different things of just things to reach out to that I know as I've never had my own family childcare, but I helped open a group childcare home here in Winsburg, Kansas a few years back. And so it's a little bit of the same process. And I remember even after having been in the education field and, working in the child care center inside of a Head Start, I was just amazed at how different that process was, especially when I was the one in charge and somebody else like the program director at Head Start wasn't telling me what to do and how ready and whatnot. So don't listen, maybe I guess anybody that's on the screen that is new to this, don't be afraid to reach out to your resources. Erica is going to be your go-to person for everything as you're kind of getting up and going, just all that licensing. And then hopefully tonight too, I'll be able to connect you to things that our organization can provide you in the meantime, and some community partner organizations at the state level that can help with that training, and maybe just getting going as a business. So don't be afraid to kind of stop us as we're going, or if, Nicole and Rachel, right? No, I'm forgetting names, to just interrupt and just, give some wisdom this evening, since we're recording this, and hopefully, some new providers may even be drummed up after this evening. So I just want to begin by kind of sharing, if I might, my screen, which I think I have access to do. And yeah, like Erica says, it's just always kind of a, okay, is this going to work sort of thing? And you kind of cross your fingers. And are you looking at my presentation? I hope and display here.
Yep.
Good deal.
Yep.
All right, good. So yeah, just to reiterate, Jennifer Burgart, Community Outreach and Engagement Coordinator. So as you're maybe working with Erica, or I share some things this evening and you're like, oh, I don't remember what she said or where that was. I'll provide my contact information in the chat here before we leave this evening, and you'll have that, and you can reach out or call our office. We are here to help. We have lots of wisdom in our organization, lots of individuals that have quite a bit of experience. So don't be afraid to reach out. Just a little bit of who we are and where we are as a resource and referral agency. You are in Region 1, so that's why I am here with you this evening, because I am your Region 1 representative. But we also have agencies in other parts of the state too that you might connect to as you get your license and you're trying to get your training and certification and whatnot that you need to get up and going. Things like CPR and first aid and some of those just beginning health and safety classes and foundational classes that you're going to need. So just a kind of tidbit of kind of where we are around the state. And then just how we connect primarily to providers. We used to provide the majority of the training to providers across the state. We have several partners that do that now, one of them being Casito, Kansas Childcare Training Opportunities, I believe. You'll just hear Casito all the time. And actually, Erica might recommend that to, kind of begin your first kind of trainings that you have to go through, your first modules and whatnot. So, but we do have, some of that ongoing training once you are up and going, and offer a variety of classes on all the different areas that you'll need to become familiar with in child development and whatnot as you're getting going. Such as interacting with children and child growth and development, and some business practices, which I'll share a few of you with you this evening. And then reaching out to, we also do with providers with consumer education materials. And as you see here, an example of our flyer for our childcare health consultations. So once you get your application in with Erica and you get that temporary license, you'll be contacted most likely by a childcare health consultant, and kind of go over with you just kind of some strengths and weaknesses as you're venturing into this new career choice. So that's a wonderful program that have been able to provide through some of the extra dollars coming our way from the CARES Act. So just wanted to give a little tidbit about that. And then we also connect to families. So we work with families too that will come to our website looking for childcare, and then they will see your program highlighted in our database in the choices for childcare that can be offered. And families can do that via email, they can call. We're hoping to get, a texting service soon. So lots of different ways that we reach out to families, but primarily, families looking for childcare. But we do have, again, some consumer education materials. I always like to highlight the Talk, Read, Play one, so important. And that can be a tool for you as a provider too in engaging families. We have lots of different kind of handouts that can help engage families into your program and child development too. And then two, we're trying to kind of reach out to families to be champions. As you know, Kelly said, your community and many communities across the state, you know, childcare shortage is a topic and an initiative that they're wanting to address, you know, so that families are thriving in communities, not just surviving, and or maybe not, like Kelly said, even choosing your community to live in. You know, partake in. So, and then two, again, connecting to communities with our point in time data, which I'm going to share you the Lincoln County point in time data that we have, just to kind of give you an idea of what the market rate for childcare is in your county. But that information that we're able to provide is also used by, you know, policymakers and government agencies and other funders that, you know, use this data to guide decisions and shape programs to improve childcare quality in Kansas. So I forgot to mention too that we've had a number of grants that have come out through our organization for providers, sustainability grants. So those have been super helpful, and that data that is gleaned from current childcare providers keeping their vacancies and, you know, how many children they can take on, their enrollment and whatnot up to date, goes into all that data that we provide to all the people making important decisions to improve childcare quality in Kansas and availability. So, you know, parents, childcare programs, and other community members all use this information. And that's kind of how I got connected to Kelly, was kind of in a roundabout way. So through, you know, another organization really taking advantage of that point in time data. So if I might, I will kind of quickly sneak to that, and hopefully it doesn't switch screens on me. Oh yeah, it's going to do that. So I'll just bring that over. And it's really helpful. It gives you a map here. You can go to your county, takes you straight to information for maybe. There we go. Make it a little bigger here. So this gives you a little snippet if you're thinking about going into childcare, what the demand is for the service that you're going to provide. So total number of residents under 6 years of age, there 156. And then of those, according to census data, 120 of them, both families are in the workforce, in the labor force. So that would be your primary number that you're looking at there, is that potential of demand. And then we also kind of highlight the different types of programs, like Erica was mentioning. There's different types of, you know, you can have a center, a family childcare, or a group daycare home. So in Lincoln County, 3 in that category of licensed family and group childcare home. So, you know, that's, and then you look at the capacity for which they might operate. That's not very many compared to what that demand is. That's a 17% where capacity is meeting the demand. So there's lots of opportunity for family childcare businesses in Lincoln County. So just wanted to highlight that as a reason for starting your own family childcare business or group daycare home, whichever you choose to go with, because the demand is definitely there. You know, anytime you're starting a business, you know, you want to offer something that people need and want, right, to be successful. So this gives you that information to let you know that you connect with Erica and some community partners like Childcare Aware of Kansas, and we'll help you along that path of having a family childcare in Lincoln County and being successful. So, but I also wanted to kind of highlight just kind of looking at that average part-time rate, because sometimes families are looking for that. And actually, I was working with a new provider just this last year who was doing that. She was kind of being creative with her scheduling, and she had 2 families come to her that were wanting part-time care, and between the 2 families, lo and behold, they're able to they didn't need care on the same days or the same hours, and so was kind of able to facilitate that part-time care, and actually reached out to see what she should charge for that part-time care. So in Lincoln County, looking at $75 for a weekly rate, and then $100 for an average full-time rate. And that's average. So, you know, there's room, I suppose, both directions, kind of depending on, you know, I always use the analogy, if you're thinking of operating any other small business, you look at the going, and then, well, maybe if I, you know, offered some other additional things, maybe I could charge a little bit. Maybe I want to sneak right under that average to kind of attract some families too. So just wanted to provide you with that, and know that at any time you can access it yourself to just kind of be reassured. And then I didn't know, Erica, if you wanted to speak to any part of kind of what you're seeing here, or with that desired capacity and license capacity, and kind of what that means. I'll sneak back
Well,
up.
we actually, we had one provider retire, so we're down to just 2 in Lincoln County. So
Okay, yeah. So, and that happens sometimes with us, and she probably just hasn't, either we haven't received notification that that license has been suspended or ended, and or she hasn't gone in to close her profile. Oh, that's sad to hear. So you're down.
yeah, that is, it makes it a little bit more desperate.
Yes, it does.
I think that the capacity part, you also just kind of have to think as a provider. You can open it up to, you know, a lot of times the infant slots will fill very quickly. And in KDHE licensing terms, an infant is 2 weeks to 18 months is what we consider an infant. The day they turn 18 months old until they're 5, they're preschool aged, and then school age is 5 to 11. But you are the business owner, and you do have a lot of say in, like, some people don't watch infants. If you don't watch infants, you can have more preschool age children. And then you also can kind of decide, you know, you may be licensed and you could have 3 infants, but maybe 2 is your limit, just because with the group of children you have, or infants require a lot of care. So you also kind of have to know what your limits are and what you feel like you will be able to do to provide the best care for everyone. So there's flexibility within the capacity as well. And you know, you can say, I'm only going to do 1 infant, I'm only going to do 2, but you do have to stay within what the capacity chart for your license type says, as far as maximum number you can have. And those rates seem really low to me. I don't regulate that. That's not something I look at and say, oh gosh, you're within regulation or not within regulation. But I do see, as I'm surveying, I see people's contracts and handbooks, and those seem like low. So I don't know.
Yeah, that was something I actually kind of wanted to maybe talk about at the end more so, is the rates that are being charged, because I also, when I talk to economic development directors around the area, it does seem like we are very much on the low end of the scale. And I don't know, you know, being in a small town, you know, we all know what each other charges in a way. And, you know, I don't know how the current providers feel about raising rates. I'm sure parents wouldn't be happy about raising rates, but I also feel like as a business, you know, you have to survive. I mean, you know, you've got to be able to earn a living as well. And so, you know, that's something that I personally feel like at some point, all of our existing providers need to have a heart-to-heart conversation with ourselves in terms of, is it time to raise rates or not? Because if a new provider gets started and you know, they're higher, or because that's what they need, then, you know, I can't judge them for that, you know. So I don't know if we want to get into that quite yet, but that is something that I feel like we should probably definitely talk about, and especially for the new providers, and where things need to be, and what is average out there. Let's see. I guess, so are there any questions at this point for Jennifer, or do we need to back up on anything? I have a note here. So in terms of a couple benefits, if you're operating out of your house, you know, and this is a business, so there are some tax write-off advantages to that. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit, in terms of what are all the write-offs that you can claim, which maybe help?
I can a little bit. I'm mostly going to refer that to a resource because I'm not a tax professional.
Disclaimer.
And so, yeah. So when you had that on the list, I was like, yes, but I have some great resources for you to reach out to for this kind of purpose of getting your business started. So I just want to highlight, you know, real quickly before I get into that business and tax, kind of looking at those sorts of resources to just, you know, I'm going to put this in the chat box before the end of the evening, but we have a wonderful document called Let's Get Started. It's as easy as 1, 2, 3. And I feel like, and Erica too, like I was just like, it really encompasses everything you need to know when you're really thinking about starting a family childcare business, just kind of all in one place. It's going to refer you to everything that Erica and I are showing you this evening. Like, you know, it'll say contact licensing and get your orientation done, but it really walks you through, just like she showed you on the KDHE website, you know, those different kind of key important steps in the beginning of things to really get done and think about in those days where you're kind of waiting for that temporary license and or full approval to get going. So like I said, I'll highlight that, put it in the chat box. And if that's kind of difficult to get to there, I'm going to send it to Kelly too. And hopefully she can get it to you. Did we ask for contact information? Do you have everybody's contact information, Kelly, as a way to kind of reach out? Or
yeah, if you could put it in the chat. I do believe that I've got a page on our website where I've got your information. I know I've got Erica's on there, but Jennifer, I'm not sure I've got yours on there.
I will put mine in there too, but then everybody else on the screen too, because if you're currently a childcare provider, you could be a great resource for somebody thinking about it or willing to join and really get a nice, neat kind of professional learning community going here, you know, within your community. So there's lots of different ways to do that. We, again, be glad to help facilitate that if you're looking at doing that. But so yeah, I'll share this document as a kind of a synopsis of this evening. But you know, when you're thinking about those business strategies, you know, Erica mentioned contacting the Department of Children and Families and kind of, you know, maybe considering taking or accepting DCF subsidy from families. So, you know, when you're talking about, and again, maybe we can get into this later at your rates, perhaps, you know, you want your business to be affordable for everyone, right? But there recently, the percentage of families that qualify probably most likely has drastically gone up in your community and all communities across the state, because that kind of that threshold of where families qualify was increased significantly. So just to give you an example, I and my husband, if you know, rewind 17 years and you know, when I was first entering the teaching field, so I was thinking about, okay, just around here, like if I was first year teacher, what would my salary be? And then to like my husband entering the marketing field, what his salary would be. And even with one child, we would qualify for some subsidy. So, you just might not think that you have families that would, and that can kind of help offset the cost. So that can kind of help bring up that market rate a little bit, because you can charge a bit more for that care, and then that subsidy can kick in for families and really kind of help balance that out. So that's something to really think about when you want to increase your income. And then 2, Erica mentioned the CACFP, the food nutrition program, which schools participate in, and you can get a significant amount of your food expenses, reimbursed. So that's something really encourage you to reach out to and think about. And then 2, make sure your fees you're charging are, competitive with other providers. And we'll get into that conversation maybe a little bit later. But reducing those expenses, just want to encourage you to really reach out to a tax professional that is familiar with childcare tax law, just kind of maybe even who you use for your regular personal might not be the best fit for your business. So just really being inquisitive with your tax professional on doing those sorts of kind of services for you. Childcare and operating a business in your home has some unique things that you really can take advantage of to help cut your costs. For instance, using your space, you can deduct your space in your home and a percentage of your utilities and just different things like that really can help cut those expenses. And then, keep careful records. And I'm going to address this resource here in just a moment with Tom Copeland, but including the time in which you spend for your business when the children aren't there, because that can be an expense that you kind of equate back to your business too. And, making sure like keeping track of your mileage also, like if you're transporting, keeping track of that, keeping a log in your car or wherever it's handiest. Those are just ways to, again, get those expenses cut down a bit. And taking advantage of programs that provide free materials and supplies for your business and services also. So, reaching out to us, the Casino organization, they offer your trainings at either free and or really reduced rates. And, ours is a minimal cost too of $15 a training, but just anytime there's something like that to take advantage of, or even, if you're an Amazon Prime thing, getting your families to sign, making an account and doing Smiles, the Amazon program where you kind of earn back some dollars. So, just different things of, becoming aware of like that can really help you. And then just ways to, and then in that cost and in that whole business scheme, and thinking about tax preparation, but don't forget to include insurance and making sure that your insurance is where it needs to be to kind of, avoid any liability to your home or your family, with your business that you're operating inside of there. So just making sure that your insurance provider is aware that you are operating a business in your home, and we'll just avoid some different challenges that might arise if you are thinking about that. And then, just to also think about reaching out to your small business development center. They provide a lot of resources for small businesses, and sometimes, and we as an organization are really encouraging them to reach out to family childcare providers too, because sometimes I think, at least even operating in a group childcare home, sometimes you forget that you are a business, you are providing education for children, but you are a business too. So being able to take care of many of those opportunities, grants, reduced rate loans, lots of classes on just financial literacy that they offer, many of them free, just, an hour and a half of an evening or something like that. So I put here in my PowerPoint just a couple of resources when you're thinking about, business strategies that we really kind of recommend and, try to connect people to when they're thinking about opening a family childcare business. So that being the Tom Copeland Taking Care of Business. He has several books that are available. And I was a part of a United Way grant here in Saline County, where I worked with some new providers, and we did a book study. See, I have to get my blur right, but it's called Family Childcare Business Planning Guide. And so we just kind of walked through some of those important things like tax preparation. So, are you logging your time? Are you logging your mileage? Are you logging all of your expenses that you could be claiming? So it's just, and it walks you through all of those different things. And we have some available to check out. So if you wanted to check out that resource, we sure could, but I think it's like, I don't know, $13 or something on his website too. So it would definitely be a resource I would think about considering if you've never operated and owned your own business. So, and then two, your local service provider for the Kansas Small Business Development Center is located at Fort Hays University. And that link is there, and I'll drop that in the chat too. But again, there are some grants out there that I think, would be quite appropriate for family childcare. And they were a great resource for the payment protection plan that, once you were getting going, if things should go awry again in the future, it's just good to have somebody like that you can really reach out to with a good business toolkit, I guess, for lack of better words. So any questions on any of that I've provided there?
Well, I think since you started talking about grants here, I'll kind of use that as a segue for the startup grants that we have here. So because this is we're in such a desperate situation with our childcare. The Economic Development Board has approved a $5,000 startup grant. And so we have an application. I will actually pull that up on my screen if I can find it. What did I do with it? Is it? Can you guys see that? Okay. So basically the deal with the $5,000 grant is, we will help with any of the startup costs. So if there's anything associated with getting up and going, we are willing to help provide funding to do that. So, if you need to fence in a backyard, if you need to buy some toys, if you need to buy some supplies, if you need to, I even think if there's some kind of app that helps you run the business in terms of tracking, the ages of kids and the schedules and whatever, so that you feel like you can run at maximum capacity. Those are the types of things that we are willing to help provide grant funding for. The deal is, though, because we are economic development and we are primarily publicly funded, we have to make sure that we are protecting our investment in this. So we can't just give somebody $5,000 without some strings attached, because we want to make sure that the follow through is there. And frankly, most of the time when economic development does grant funding, you actually have to do the project and have all those expenses first, and then we will reimburse you after the fact when the project is completed, so to speak. But in this case, because we know that people might actually need money up front and they can't, you know, cover necessarily all those expenses and then get reimbursed later. We had to kind of try and figure out, how do we give people money up front, but yet still make sure that you follow through with your end of the bargain, and you don't just go to Hawaii and say, oops, I forgot to open a daycare. So the deal is to kind of help provide the money up front, but protect our investment, is that this is going to be actually start out as a loan. So you will go to your local bank, and I've talked to the local bankers, and so they're kind of aware how this is going to work. But you go to the local bank and you basically become pre-approved for a $5,000 loan. And the deal is that you know, you apply to us. So you come to us saying, hey, the bank is on board with approving us for a $5,000 loan. We don't expect you to actually take that loan quite yet, but the bank is on board with this. And so if we approve you for the child care grant, then we'll go ahead, it's structured as a loan. So the bank may want collateral, that you will have to sign this as a loan. But the deal is that once you open as a child care facility, and as long as you are continuing to operate that child care facility and you are operating at maximum capacity, which there's some gray there because of the number of kids and ages and all that kind of stuff. But basically, you know, you're taking more than one kid. You know, you are actually taking on children, and you're not just watching the neighbor kid or two or a niece or nephew or something like that. But you're operating at maximum capacity. Basically, economic development then will repay the loan for you. So that's how this kind of turns into a grant. It starts out as a loan, but as long as you're running a facility and you're operating and have kids, then we will basically be making that payment for you. If you, and this is a 5-year deal, so if you are operating a facility for 5 years, you will never have to make a payment on that loan. Economic development will pay the loan for you. However, if you quit within a year, or if you quit within 2 years, you know, we'll have made a payment for the first year, but then you're going to have to finish out paying off that loan. And so that is a little bit of the trick, where we want to make sure somebody doesn't just get started, they operate for a short amount of time, and then they fizzle very quickly. Because frankly, experience over the last few years has shown that sometimes people have the best of intentions in getting started, but they don't have the ability to stick it out. And so this is our way of making sure that you know, everybody is in it for a certain amount of time here. So that's the $5,000 childcare grant. And also just announced, was that last week or a week ago or so, that we will also kick in an additional $3,000 grant as long as you can be permanently licensed and operational by the end of the year. And this is kind of this bonus because we are in such a desperate situation. The $5,000 grant that we originally approved didn't necessarily have a timeline on it. So I kind of felt like, you know, somebody could sit there and twiddle their thumbs and hem and haw and think about it forever. And that's not necessarily helping us in our dire need or helping parents who are, you know, really, really struggling with childcare. So this is kind of our extra way to get people off center and get people moving. So, you know, there is potentially $8,000 worth of grant funding available to help a childcare facility get started, but you need to get started. You know, when I think about Erica and the timeline and the process and everything, a temporary license isn't going to cut it. You know, we need to make sure that you are fully licensed, the facility, you've done what you needed to do to get the facility permanently licensed. So you pretty much need to get on it soon in order for all the process to work itself through. Having said that, you know, if you're not going to quite make it to the end of the year and to get fully licensed or operational, if you keep me updated and you've done everything that you can do and it's sort of in God's hands now kind of thing, and you're just waiting, let me know. And we're not here to be so rigid that we're not going to help people out. We understand that there's a certain amount of go with the flow that comes with licensing processes. So, but I also don't want to get to the end of the year and have somebody say, well, I haven't actually, done a major step, if it's on your shoulders of what the holdout is. So basically keep me posted. I really want to make sure that we help people, because this is a business. There are startup costs associated before you ever start to recoup some of that stuff. And so we realize that, and we want that, and we want to get started. And I guess this another surprise benefit that just kind of popped up last week, I think it was, is that KDHE waiving the application fees. I'm not sure what that adds up to be for a new provider, but that's certainly another benefit that I kind of feel like if anybody's going to start a childcare facility, now's the time to do it, because these things aren't going to be around forever. So this is kind of the opportunity. I think that's kind of what I wanted to talk about in terms of the startup grant. Are there any questions from you guys on that? Or Nicole and Faye, I know this doesn't necessarily apply to you because you guys are already there, but do you see, if you were in a new startup position, any questions that you would have or concerns that you would have? Okay. And I guess
restart it.
What's that?
Can we restart it?
No, you can't.
It's a joke.
Yeah. I guess the one thing that I would also say is, if I'm assuming this is maybe going to be around for a little while, but through all this federal COVID funding, there has been money being pushed out to providers. And I know both of you have benefited from some of that. So I kind of feel like if somebody gets up and going, you've got grant funding right now to get you started, but it could be 6 months to a year from now. There's still federal COVID money that might maybe coming down to existing providers. And at that time you would be an existing provider. So, it's impossible to say what might be coming down the pike. Of course, all of that money could dry up too, and who knows. But there are things, it seems like just over the past year with the pandemic, that things have been happening, and there has been benefits to childcare providers because of it. So that's my spiel on grant funding available that we've got. But so Faye and Nicole, I guess I have some questions for you guys, just in terms of how things work on the ground level. Well, one is, so do both of you participate in the food program where you are actually reimbursed for food costs? Yes. And what does that end up being per day or per kid, or however that works?
Per kid.
I think lunch wise, I think it ends up being between $2.50 and $3. I don't actually know the numbers. And then it's for breakfast and then snack.
Snacks.
I mean, it's worth it, definitely. Yeah. I mean, when all you have to do is keep track.
Yeah.
It's not.
So if you are basically providing breakfast, lunch, and snacks to kids, you would be reimbursed for a certain amount for each of those, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then do you guys participate in the DCF program as well?
Yes.
Okay. And what is that process like? Is that something that's, I mean, that seems like a whole nother kind of government thing, and I could be wrong. So, but
I think that's also worth it. Because in our community, a lot of it, we do have a lot that would qualify, and I've had, foster care kids in the past. And really, that's just another thing of keeping track of their hours and turning them in. And it's a lot easier because you're guaranteed that money. You don't have to chase somebody down the street, trying to get paid. So it's just one of those things that your money's coming on this day, you're going to get it. So it's that stability of knowing when you're getting your money.
And what is that rate? Do they pay the same rate that other kids, or is there some sort of government set rate that they pay differently?
I think that they're
Amount?
the same, aren't they? Pretty close. I'm not sure what it is.
I didn't have any DCF kids or any, so.
I
don't
think
know.
most recently I was paid pretty close. I always didn't charge that extra because, DCF will pay something and then it might be less than what your rate is. Well, sometimes you just, if the parent can't afford it, you just kind of make it even where, that's one of the things about it being your own business. You can just, adjust those things. If a parent's really trying, or if it's a foster care parent that has a bunch of kids. So it's just one of those things that you can, get the difference, or you can just kind of take it.
Okay. And then, so you mentioned, some parents and paying, sometimes I've heard that sometimes parents are a little slow, or they try to wiggle their way out of paying something. And so how do you do that? Do you make them pay up front for the week ahead, or do you kind of provide the service essentially and then hope they pay at the end, or how does your payment process work?
With me, I kind of like, if they're teachers or something, they get paid once a month. So that you're sending them an invoice, at the 10th of every month. Okay. Or like a lot of mine do it like every Friday they have to pay. In our situation, the families around here that are not going to pay you. And so not that you would say no to them, but you would upfront figure out those situations that you would not continue to have care if you knew that they weren't going to pay.
Okay.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I do like monthly. None of my parents have I don't have any issues with anybody, so they pay end of the month.
Okay.
Every month. And if I have like part-time kids, like just drop-ins, they can just pay the same day.
Okay.
But,
so how do you charge then? By the day, by the week, by the month? Because looks like $100 a week is our average. And I think last time I really talked to you guys, you were all kind of, that was everybody's rates. You were all kind of the same. So
yeah, and I think that we're going to maybe up that in the future. So any new ones you might check, because you don't want to start and then realize that you're very low. Mm-hmm. So, and it's easier if we're all on the same page, because then you don't have people jump in, oh, she's $25 cheaper a week, so a lot of the times, but I know like Faye and I have really talked about it, and it's been 100 for a long time. And so the surrounding, we're really low compared to the services we provide.
Yeah. So what is your part-time rate, and how does that work? Because I know the part-time kids really can create havoc on a schedule, because you can have a part-time kid, but then you can't find another kid to offset.
Mm-hmm.
So then you're just out that money in a way. So
right.
What's your part-time rate, and how do you charge? And then at what point, how many days a week actually is considered full-time?
Like literally,
I'm 100.
Yeah.
I'm
literally just do 100 a week.
100 whether they're
Yeah.
Because you can't fill in those spots at all.
So you really only have just full-time.
Right.
Yes. So the parents that need part-time care, do they just pay for a week even though they're only there 2 or 3 days a week?
Yes.
Okay.
Which seems bad, but really, there's a lot of empty space if you're part-time. You can't fill in, somebody one afternoon a week. So you either, you charge them a drop-in rate, and it's based on availability, where most days I don't have anybody, or they pay that and they can come and go as they need to.
Okay. So how do you do drop-in? What's your drop-in rate? And
I charge 25.
25. Okay.
I do the same thing, 20 a day, like even if they come like just the mornings and leave in the afternoon, I still do 20. So
Okay.
thinking about it for next year. So I kind of figured out my thingy for next year. So
Okay. So is that like, say, little Timmy, mom called and Timmy is sick today. So all of a sudden, like, oh, hey, I can have another kid. Do you reach out to try and earn that extra $20, $25 because, hey, now I've got an availability? Or do you just say, oop, great, Timmy's not around, I just got
No, I just take the easier day and just like, it's worth the $20 you're not gonna get sometimes, where
yeah.
you just need a break from little Timmy sometimes.
I understand. Well, the reason I asked that is because this was a little while ago, and I think it was actually a childcare center owner that I was talking to, where they saw that as a potential to earn extra income, where, hey, every time you have it, it's a short notice sort of sign it kind of thing, but if you have a kid that doesn't come in that day, that means you have licensed capacity. And so you could put it on a Facebook page saying, hey, we have a vacancy for today, and whatever parent sees the post first or whatever. And that actually ended up, and again, this is for a childcare center, so it probably happens more often than with you guys, but he said that adds up to be a couple $100 a month extra.
Right.
So, that is potential earned income, but yeah, it's also.
I think it would depend on too, what kid it is. Cause like, if you just let like a baby or an infant drop in and you don't have, the extra beds, or, you kind of have to think about where are they going to bring their own pack and play, those kind of things where like, if I only have a spot till 1 o'clock because I don't have that space for them to nap or things like that, where yeah. But if they're, 5 years old, that's different.
Yeah. And I can see that. So with ages, and I gotta tell you, when I talk to you guys about ages and birthdays, and you have to have a matrix in your head going on at all times in terms of what your real capacity is. And my brain doesn't work that way. So
I have dates on a calendar. Like we have like countdowns.
To say, so how do you manage that? Because it truly can change day to day. Right. If somebody has a birthday, now all of a sudden you have an opening or you don't have an opening.
Right. Well, you kind of just have a waiting list for that. So
yeah.
Okay.
Fill it in.
Yeah.
Well, so how does it work? I guess another thing I don't understand is the older kids who are in school. So you've got your infants and your toddlers, but there's also kids who are in school most of the day, but need aftercare. How does that impact capacity and licensing? And Eric, I don't know if this is a question for you or not. Can you take extra kids for 2 hours at the end of the day because they're a little older? Or nope, you actually have to have fewer kids during the bulk of the day because those last 2 hours of the day, you're gonna have somebody come in and to get you up to that capacity.
Yeah, it fluctuates and then you think about summertime, it changes. So in childcare licensing, there's infants, which is 18 months and under. Preschool is 18 months to 5 years, and school age is 5 to 11. And you can only have so many. That's where it's kind of a matrix too. you kind of start at your lower end. So you count how many infants you have enrolled, and then you bump up to the preschool age and then your school age. Maybe you have 3 infants and 2 school age, but you could have 3. So you can add that spot to your, preschool. You can substitute that younger kid for an older kid, but you can't go the other way. So sometimes it's just a matter of calling me and we can chart it out and see how it works. The only time you can have extra kids is in the regulations. If you have some preschoolers that go to part-time preschool over the lunch hour, you can have 2 extra preschoolers in care, like, because they might both be there eating lunch while one is leaving for school and one's coming home or something, so, or coming to childcare.
Okay.
So you can apply for an exception through KDHE and ask for an exception to those numbers for, a kid. And it's usually for a very pointed time frame. Maybe you're going to have a birthdays change and you're going to be over if you keep your existing kids in care. So that's an option to try to get an exception. Right now, the pandemic has kind of put a damper on exceptions because KDHE is truly wanting our providers to stay right at license capacity and not have extra bodies in childcare homes. So, but you can always ask for one, but right now they're not giving them as freely as they usually do in non-pandemic times.
Faye or Nicole, do you have anything to add to that, or do you have kids kind of coming and going from preschool and back, and how does that transportation work? Do you provide transportation, or is that on the parents?
Just on the parents, I think. Preschool has done something different this year, which has kind of helped, that the morning goes later and then she is feeding the afternoon kids, the afternoon preschool kids. So they might in passing see each other, but their class gets done at 11:30 and then you can have the afternoon preschool picked up to be there by noon to eat lunch. So it might look on paper that they're both there, but they're really not, because preschool needed to go longer hours, and so they've adjusted that time, which has kind of made it easier. But then they're not at school on Wednesdays, which really kind of messes it up.
Okay. Okay. All right, let's see. So in terms of Faye and Nicole, what do you guys see as our need for, how many providers do you feel like we truly need right now? I know that I'm pretty sure there's at least 5 babies on the way, or it has either just been born or are on the way. And I'm not necessarily plugged into all those, so there might be, but more. But I can think of some parents offhand that are just, it's a struggle. So
I would say 2 or more than.
Okay,
At least.
Yeah.
Because I have
For
kids on a
now.
waiting list that don't even exist yet. I mean, that
Yeah.
a future baby is holding a spot. I mean,
Yes. Well, I do
at
too.
least 2, I would say.
yeah. Okay. Well, I've kind of felt probably at least 2 as well, but I'm thinking even probably realistically it's more like 3 or 4, just because if a new family moves to town,
It's growing. Mhm.
right, if we want to grow, we still have to have just a few vacant spots just to kind of absorb on a day-to-day basis. Let's say one of you gets sick and all of a sudden you just can't operate for a day. We need some places just for those kids to go. So in my mind it's probably 3 or 4 easily, just to cover what we've got and provide some breathing room to the whole situation.
Mm.
Let's see. Do you guys see a need for night or weekend type of childcare, or sort of alternate hours? I know you guys pretty much just operate kind of during the day, typical working hours, but do you feel ever any pressure or see a need for somebody to operate over a weekend, or evening, or even overnight? You know, I'm thinking about nurses and stuff like that.
I think that the nursing home and hospital have a need for it because I mean, they have to be to work at like 5 o'clock in the morning. And so some of them are 12-hour shifts. Well, I personally don't open until 7:30. And so those aren't even, I mean, when I first started, you're kind of desperate on that. And so I used to have ones that came at 5:30, but you just kind of over time, they just don't fit anymore, but it's definitely because the nursing home shifts in the hospital start pretty early, or they work on the weekends. I mean, and you can always charge more for those situations, but it's definitely a need more than the 8 to 5.
Okay, gotcha. Well, for the sake of time, I guess, Rachel or Caitlin, you know, feel free if you have any questions, jump in. I'm kind of, I guess, asking the questions that I feel like we've talked about a lot in the past, and so I know kind of come up, or things that I still don't understand even after thinking about this for 5 years. But what would you guys say is the biggest lesson you've learned, or you wish somebody would have told you X before you got started? Like your one passing bit of advice, wisdom.
Don't have your own kids in daycare. I keep trying to send my youngest to Faye, and it just doesn't. I mean, having your kids there is a challenge sometimes. But then it's kind of nice because they can help once they get older.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess on that note, so if you have kids, it counts, you know, just because it's your kid doesn't mean they don't take a childcare slot. So in a way, Nicole, I think this is something I remember you saying, like you had a baby and the baby's costing you money, you know, because,
Yeah.
you know,
I was losing
you're not getting
$100 a
paid
week
for your own kid.
Yeah.
So,
well, but technically our own kids probably don't get the level of care that you give to other people, so it shouldn't count.
Gotcha. Well, I think those were my big questions. I guess, does anybody have any final parting thoughts or comments? I appreciate Erica and Jennifer, you guys kind of plugging in links and your contact information in the chat.
I'm just really excited for this opportunity for, you know, I was a provider, just kind of, I had a bad daycare situation and I started doing daycare myself and I loved it. I mean, my kids were little, so I identify with the challenges. My 2-year-old would stand at the door and cry because he was going to share mom for the day.
Yeah.
But we also, now they're teenagers and we still have fond memories of the different things we got to do. And all the things I got to see my own kids do that I missed for like the first couple years when they were really tiny. And I just think it's such a great, rewarding thing to do if you are having any doubts about it, but your heart's leaning towards, hey, I'd really like to stay home with my kids or run my own business out of my home. I think this is a great opportunity to go for it.
I agree. Awesome. Jennifer, any parting thoughts?
Yeah, I will just kind of, you know, second Erica. I thought about it numerous times when my kids were little and didn't. So I'll chime in with that. But I kind of wish I would have, looking back. There's just, it's challenging. Nobody can deny that, but it is also so rewarding. And that's why I dropped in the chat the 10 reasons to become a childcare provider, or, at least, even choosing just early childhood in general. Because it's the things that I miss. I'm like, I need to be back working with kids because I miss these things. Like one of them is all the hugs and macaroni necklaces you could ever want. And if you've never gotten one, then you don't know what you're missing. So it's just, and every day is unique. There's just, you're never ever watching the clock, are you ladies? You're never watching the clock. It just seems like it just is running away from you most of the time, from my experiences, and just being a part of a community of just wonderful individuals, and just securing the future. I mean, you're putting a stamp on the work you're doing and the connections you're making with children and families in your communities. And granted, most of the children that you will care for probably may not remember all of those moments, but you will. So I want to thank, ladies, you on the screen for kind of giving information this evening. It's so valuable. So really, thank you so much. And thanks for the opportunity to be here. And just know that you have so many resources if you're thinking about embarking on this adventure at your disposal. Like Faye said, can I start again? I love that. I was like, yeah, I know. Don't we all wish we had that redo button, right? Or undo, either way, I don't know. But and just again, thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. So.
Well, thank you so much. And I guess my parting comment, and I'm kind of just mostly saying this for the recording, and whoever might hasn't been able to participate or talk to any of you guys, but my experience in talking to both Erica and Jennifer is you guys have been super personable, very approachable. No question is a stupid question, because I know I ask some that probably are borderline. So you guys have been great with that. And I know also Faye and Nicole, and then I'll say Lisa Feldkamp as well, who's the one that just retired from having a daycare. They are always willing to help and share advice. And I know that they talk constantly with each other about just, each other's needs, what they're hearing from parents and what's out there and how to support each other. So I know that, anybody who has questions, they will definitely be willing to help. And because honestly, I think some people can see, well, this is we're these are competitors type of thing, but I know that we have such a need that, getting to the point of having competition for kids, we are so far from that. I don't think that's even a concern. And so if anything, you guys are under pressure to not stay within the rules of the law in terms of number of kids, just because parents are so desperate. And so you guys see the pressure probably more than anybody. And I know what that pressure can be like, and it's not always a fun place to be. So there's certainly motivation to make sure that we do have other providers get up and going. So with that, I guess I will call it a day, close this out. But again, thank you guys for participating. And Rachel and Caitlin, feel free to give me a call with any questions. And, we'll just see where things go. So, all right. Thank you very much and have a good night, you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Nice meeting you, Erica.